Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Today I am here with Ralph and Vanellope from Wreck-It Ralph and Ralph Breaks the Internet to understand how a trauma bond forms and what to do about it, and why we are susceptible to trauma bonds as post-traumatic parents. But first, if you like this content, if you're curious about trauma bonds and how they might affect your parenting, please click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. So very often we can understand trauma so well from watching movies that really show scenes of trauma. In Wreck-It Ralph, we have this character, Ralph, who is given the job of being a bad guy. He goes to Bad Guys Anonymous, where he says, I'm Ralph, I'm a bad guy. His job is to get mad and wreck the building. Now, this is not Ralph's fault. He was programmed to be a bad guy. And in fact, the game cannot function if Ralph is not a bad guy. In fact, later on in the movie, when Ralph disappears, spoiler alert, the game goes out of order because without Ralph to wreck the building, there's kind of no point in playing the game. So Ralph is a bad guy, and that's an incredibly lonely experience. The hardest part, and the part that really reminds me of the process of growing up with narcissistic parents and emotional abuse, comes when Ralph sees that all the citizens of his game are having a party to celebrate the 30th anniversary of their game. And they've invited Felix, who's the main character of the game. He fixes all the damage that Ralph causes. So we kind of see the golden boy and the black sheep kind of phenomenon, right? So we have Ralph, and he is not invited to the party because nobody even thinks of him as integral to the game or valuable. He's just a bad guy. He wrecks the building. He actually lives in a dump with garbage. And they all live, the Nicelanders all live in this nice little apartment building, and it's all pretty and pristine. And of course, Felix is their hero. And every time he fixes the building, they give him pie. He's the golden child. And Ralph sees that they're having a 30th anniversary party, and he decides he's going to try to make friends. As the black sheep very often does, the black sheep thinks, oh, I'm so evil. I should be better. Everyone's always criticizing me and telling me to be better. Literally, they're telling me to be different than my programming. And because very often black sheeps in this kind of family dynamic are the truth tellers. They are those people whose passions bubble very close to the surface, like Ralph's, who see the truth, who don't know how to stay silent, who literally cannot shut up to save their lives. So Ralph comes in, and there's this party going on, and they make this gorgeous cake, and every apartment in the building is made out of a different flavor for cake. And there's lemon for Lucy and red velvet for Jean and all these cakes. And Ralph is stuck in some chocolate flavored mud at the bottom of the cake. And he asks, what's the flavor of the mud I'm stuck in? And the woman who baked the cake says, chocolate. And Ralph says, I don't like chocolate, because no one bothered asking Ralph, well, what's your favorite flavor of cake? And what happens in this kind of family dynamic is you get enraged. You get irrationally upset. I mean, it's just a flavor of cake. Okay, so you don't like chocolate. But Ralph is feeling like, wow, every single person at this party got their favorite flavor of cake baked in to the building, and I'm in chocolate that I hate. And he gets really mad, which of course is pathologized because like it's just cake. So Ralph goes over to Jean, who's being kind of the meanest to him, and he says, Ralph would like to be on top of the cake with all the Nicelanders too. And he tries to put the little Ralph figure. It's like a little figurine of him on top of the cake. And Jean says, Ralph can't be on top of the cake. Felix needs to be on top of the cake. Felix is getting his medal. And Ralph says, well, maybe Ralph should get the medal for the change. And Jean said, well, you're a bad guy. Bad guys don't get medals. And they start having this back and forth debate. If you look at this scene, and then Jean says to him, well, Felix gets a medal, but you're just the bad guy who wrecks the building. And Ralph yells, no, I'm not. And Jean yells, yes, you are. And Ralph yells, no, I'm not. And Jean says, yes, you are. And then Ralph gets so mad, he goes, no, I'm not. And he whacks his fist and he wrecks the building. So he's just the bad guy who wrecks the building. And this happens in narcissistic families because these situations are so emotional to the target. And to everyone else, it's just a slice of cake. But think about it. This is Ralph's first slice of cake in 30 years. This is Ralph watching everybody else get their favorite flavor of cake while he has to go live in the garbage and not get any cake at all. That's painful, but it feels outsized, like how dear. And then, of course, Ralph's big emotions ruined the party for everybody because he destroyed the cake. So Ralph goes on this little journey to find a medal because he told Jean, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get a medal. And he said, if I get a medal, will you let me live in the penthouse with you? And Jean says, yeah, he says, if I get a medal, will you let me live in the apartment building with all the nice landers? And Jean says, if you get a medal, we'll let you live in the penthouse. But it's not going to happen because bad guys don't get medals. Again, that reinforcement in one of these very, very narcissistic families where you are the bad guy, you remain the bad guy, you cannot grow, you cannot evolve, you certainly cannot come into your superpowers. You need to remain the bad guy, and we're just going to reinforce that. And so, like so many black sheep, Ralph goes off on a journey to find himself and find his true calling. And there are so many of us. For a moment, stop and think, are you one of these people? Do you have a lot of maybe academic, maybe financial, maybe occupational, maybe hobbies? Do you have a lot of places where you really show your worth, where you can be like, I know for me, like I have a PhD, right? I am the CEO of my practice. These are things that people use to kind of puff themselves up. Look at the fancy car I drive. Look at the designer clothes I wear. Look at this amazing hobby I have. I make the best sourdough bread in my neighborhood, right? That idea that when you've been the black sheep, you need to do whatever you can to establish yourself as somebody who has a gold medal, right? Because you want to be the hero. You want to be that person that has something to look up to because deep down, that toxic family has just stitched into your programming how evil, deficient, what a bad guy you are. And it's interesting because Ralph is in a Bad Guys Anonymous group, and there's a character, Zangief, who makes the point that you can be a bad guy without being a bad guy, but Ralph doesn't see it because his toxic family sees having the role as bad guy who smashes the building means you are a bad guy. And this very often happens in toxic families where a child has a certain role in the family. Maybe they're born after a big break in children. Maybe they're the only child of their gender. Maybe they're a child who looks a lot like somebody who one of the parents really dislikes. Something that's in their programming. Like they can't do much to change that. They can't change that they're the youngest child or the oldest child. They can't change that they look like, great Aunt Bertha who abused you, right? These are not things that the child can necessarily change within their own abilities, but they're blamed for it. And the toxic family, you're a bad guy, you're a bad guy, you're a bad guy, you'll never amount to anything, you're a bad guy. Why are you getting so emotional about cake? You're a bad guy, you're just a bad guy. So Ralph travels to this game called Sugar Rush. And in Sugar Rush, he meets a character, Vanellope. Now, Vanellope also has a backstory. Vanellope is a glitch, and she's being very badly bullied because of it. She's not allowed to race in the big race. The game is called Sugar Rush. It's a racing game. She's not allowed to race because they think that if people see her glitching, they'll assume that she's in some way misprogrammed, and then people won't want to play the game. And they treat her horribly, again, for something that's not within her control. At first, Ralph and Vanellope find each other really annoying because Vanellope is very annoying. She's like, can I be annoying? Yeah, I can be annoying. I'm going to ask you a question. She's extremely annoying. Sarah Silverman does a great job of voicing an extremely annoying character. And she also steals Ralph's medal, which he needs to get back to his game and prove to Jean that he's not a black sheep and perhaps finally win the respect and even just being treated like a human. Now, Ralph actually sees Vanellope being bullied. And that's when Ralph's perspective on Vanellope flips. And suddenly he sees that Vanellope's a kindred spirit. Just like him, she's a glitch. She's being punished because of her programming. She's a black sheep, except she doesn't have a family at all. She's kind of, because she doesn't have a family, all the racers can be mean to her. Nobody defends her. Everybody persecutes her. And he's like, oh, she and I are the same. Ralph and Vanellope become really good friends. And of course, many, many, many other things happen. There's an evil king and all sorts of cool stuff that happens. I highly recommend this movie simply just for the visual prettiness of it and the great story and the nod to the Wizard of Oz in it. It's a fabulous story. But aside from that, at the end of the first movie, Ralph and Vanellope are best friends because they were the first to see each other's essential humanity. And what happens is there is this very, very close friendship. In the second movie, Ralph breaks the internet. We start really seeing the problems with the trauma bond. The trauma bond is when you finally have that first person and they see you and you see them. And they understand that concept of the toxic family. They understand you on this deep level. You feel felt. You feel like you get me. And you're the first person maybe who said, oh, you are human. No one should treat you that way. You're a good person. You've got great gifts. Not only are you good, but you have great gifts. Vanellope actually asks Ralph to use his super strength and his anger to like break into something and get her car so that she can race. Ralph's super strength saves Vanellope's life. Vanellope's brain saved Ralph's life. So they finally see each other for having superpowers. But in the second movie, Ralph is trying to keep Vanellope happy because she's bored. And Ralph cannot lose Vanellope. Vanellope is thinking of breaking out of Sugar Rush and jumping to another game where it's a much grittier racing game where she feels like it's more challenging and more interesting for her. And Ralph cannot lose Vanellope. So he engages in this elaborate plot to keep Vanellope in her game so that he has his best friend, because he cannot lose his best friend, because Vanellope represents, I am a human. I deserve respect. I am seen. I am felt when I am with this person. And Ralph simply cannot let go of that. So he ends up becoming an insecurity virus that attacks the whole internet because he's trying so hard to keep Vanellope. And this is how a trauma bond can feel like true love. A trauma bond can feel like I need this person more than I need oxygen. It comes from, that's the first person who saw me. That's the first person who felt me, who made me feel felt. I can't lose that relationship. And very often when we realize it's not the person, it's not Vanellope that Ralph needs. It's friends who respect him and friends who make him feel seen and felt. He can get that from the Nicelanders. He can get that from Felix. He can get that from a lot of other characters in the game. It's not Vanellope he needs. It's what she's been giving him that he needs. Then he can renegotiate his friendship with Vanellope on much more equal and even terms. And the trauma bond can be processed and set aside. It did its job, and now it can be processed and set aside. If you like this video, if you like this content, if you love the idea of understanding our psychological processes through books and movies and kids shows, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Post-Traumatic Parenting. We get you. We've been there. We're post-traumatic parents too. Please click subscribe below if you haven't already done so that you never miss another video. If you want to have the opportunity to DM me or to feel like you're on a little bit more of a talk show where there's a Q&A, we have options for that on Instagram. You can find us at Dr. Kozlowitz Psychology. If you want much longer form versions of this type of content, check out the Post-Traumatic Parenting podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to email me to comment below and let me know if you have any questions or if you would like me to give the post-traumatic parenting treatment to another movie that you love. Bye-bye.